Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we are talking about all of the books I read this month, what my ratings were. I actually have an interesting mix because I do have some arcs in there. So maybe that'll give you an idea if you want to read them when they are out. Actually, one of them I think is out, but regardless. So yeah, I hope you enjoy and let me know if you've read any of these down below and what you recommend that I read for the next month. So anyways, yeah, let's get started. So the first book that I read this month was actually a 5-star for me, which is amazing. This is Woman Eating by Claire Coda. And this is a story about this girl who is a vampire, and this is her first time out in the real world, basically. She's growing up, her mom is in a home, and she's just trying to navigate life as a vampire and as kind of an outcast. This is not a very plot-driven story. This is really a kind of long story about her development and her experiences as a vampire, but we could take that as a metaphor for being an outcast or just growing into adulthood and how awkward it really is. And I found this book to be amazing and well done, and the writing was great. The metaphors within the metaphors were incredible. I even loved, just the simple things of everyday life that we deal with. Like for instance, there's this one part where, let's just say she has something very important coming in the mail, and she's getting annoyed because instead of the mailman like ringing her door even though she was home, they sent it to the post office instead, so now she has to go and pick it up. And yeah, I don't know, there was just a lot of realistic things that we deal with as an adult. And I think that it was just super well done through this metaphor of being a vampire. And it really also looks into the way that aging kind of affects everybody in the family and how it affects her, right? She's struggling with herself and getting into adulthood, but then also her mom is now in a home. And so she feels that burden and that responsibility, which she didn't feel before because she was cared for. So yeah, I don't know, it was just beautifully done. I think that a lot of people won't like this book because it's not fast-paced and there is no plot really, but yeah, it was beautifully done and I had such a really great time reading it. It was just a really, I don't know, it's just a perfect book for me, and it was a great way to start off the year, so no complaints here. Okay, next up we have Catabasis, and in this one we have a story about a PhD student who basically goes to hell to find her professor, because that's where she believes he is, and she needs him to come back so that she can basically finish her PhD. So yeah, this is about her travels to hell and her friend, well, acquaintance, someone else that follows with her, to kind of go and get him. And the thing is, there are a lot of different kind of almost like rooms or sections that they go through in hell, which is quite interesting because it was based off a lot of philosophy and how philosophers have thought about what hell would look like. So that was super interesting. But for me, the characters were just super insufferable and not for any reason. Like, was I supposed to hate both of them? I don't feel really, I think I was supposed to feel empathy for the main girl, but I just couldn't really get there. The author was also trying to, say something about gender, but it just did not come through. There was no like follow through with it. And it just kind of fell flat and felt empty at the end. Like we didn't get that point through the writing. So I didn't really enjoy that. There was also a lot of critique about academia, but the thing is, this idea was kind of like overly done. Like, okay, I get it. Academia's, its own thing and whatnot. And yes, a lot of times it's not very good and there are many issues from within. But the thing is that then the book was also really not accessible due to like extreme philosophical language and so much like name dropping and stuff like that. So it just, I don't know, it was like, let's critique academia for being, so posh and everything and hard to understand and, its own thing, its own language that people can't understand. But then let's also write a book where people won't be able to understand because we're using weird academic language. It just was kind of confusing why it was written like that. But I also did enjoy the logic puzzles that were within the book. I think that was fun and it gave you different ways of looking at life and stuff like that. So I'm a bit conflicted. I gave it a 3 stars, but honestly, I'm thinking of giving it a 2 stars just because the messaging was just like some of it was way too overly done, but like I said, then it was contradicted in the way that the book was even written. So yeah, I'm just not a fan, and I think a lot of people will find this hard to read, including myself. I also found this extremely hard to read, but I wanted to kind of make it through. And then yeah, the characters were just annoying and for no reason. So yeah, anyways, that is my review. I did not have a good time with this one. Next, I read Payback, which was actually an arc that I received from NetGalley. And unfortunately, I also did not really like this book. It really had an interesting premise, and I thought that it would be, I don't know, I thought that it would be more about the setting, but it was not. So basically in this book, there is this like prison for rich people and they can go on the weekends. And that sounds super intriguing. But the thing is, it's just a very basic murder mystery just set inside of this prison. But the prison also like doesn't really add any value at all to the story. So if you want a mystery that's just purely mystery, like maybe this one would be something for you if you don't really like anything else additional to the mystery. But I also found like the characters were making very bizarre choices. Like, I don't know, one of the main girls is just always doing things that don't really make sense, or it just, and also the male character also was super, it was like the dialogue was just weird. Like the dialogue was weird and didn't fit what was going on, and it had nothing to do with the setting pretty much. I mean, there is like some conclusion in the end of why the setting is relevant, but honestly, it just was kind of a fail for me, unfortunately. But again, if you want just like a basic murder mystery, this is fine. Next, I read Bright Young Woman. Finally, I can't believe it's taken me so long to read this. I gave it a 4 stars, and I am debating bumping that up to a 5. But in this story, we are basically looking at the Ted Bundy murders, but specifically from the women's perspectives, because we're always focused on Ted Bundy, you know, and he's like this celebrity, right? But it's important to kind of shift the narrative and actually focus on the lives that were affected. So yeah, the premise of this book and the characters, which I believe is Pamela and also Tina, I thought these were really great, really well done. But yeah, I think at some point it just got a little bit slow for me, or just there was a lot of, you know, character development, which I understand is necessary for what the book is trying to do. But at some point I just felt like, okay, it's going a little bit far. I'm getting a little bit too many details that don't really add too much to the character anyways. But overall, this is what I would say is like a must read, especially if you do like true crime, which I don't like true crime because I hate thinking that these things happen in real life. But if you like true crime, I think it's important to kind of shift the way that you think about these stories or narratives that, you know, happen in real life. So yeah, I definitely recommend this one. Next, I read The Present Day by Day, and this was also an arc that I received, but I think that I read it like actually after it was released. So I had this arc kind of sitting around. And this was a really interesting story. I gave it a 4 stars. It was a novella, it was very short. And apparently this is actually the second book, but I read it as a standalone. So basically there's this society in a post-apocalyptic world, and they realize that there's another society kind of growing relatively close to them, and they have to figure out what they're gonna do. And it's all about leadership. But yeah, it's like, what would you sacrifice if you could get some things that are important for yourself in return? But are you willing to sacrifice, you know, for instance, getting rid of people from your society, or people going hungry to be able to get jars, for instance? So very interesting book. It was really, I don't know, something that I don't really read very frequently, but I really enjoyed it. So I gave it a 4 stars. Next, I read Julie Chan is Dead, and this was a really fun read. I really wanted to get to this one because I know that Kayla from Books and Lala has talked about it. I gave this a 4 stars. I thought it was a fun time, really. In this story, we have this girl who has a sister, and they are basically identical twins. And one sister is basically this social media star, and the other sister is, you know, struggling to survive and working in a grocery store. At one point, the one sister goes to visit the social media star sister and figures out that she's dead and realizes to basically take her life. And in the first half, it's kind of what you would expect. But I will say what I really did enjoy about it was that in the second half, it went pretty crazy, and it wasn't exactly what you would expect from this kind of story. It kind of reminded me of Yellowface a little bit. But yeah, it was really interesting the way that the ending played out. And I would say if you're not interested in like the initial premise, you could maybe give it a try anyways, because the ending is, yeah, it's interesting. It's not exactly what you expect, and it's quite satisfying as well. Next, I read The Compound, which, oh my God, this book really did it for me. I really was not that interested in this book, but then I, for some reason, was able to get it from my library. So I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. And this book is incredible. I thought that I wouldn't be into it because basically in this story, it's all about this, you know, it's like a Love Island type of spin-off where they're on this, I guess is it an island? I don't really know, but on this compound, I guess. And it is like this matchmaking show. And basically each of them have to do different tasks in order to receive items to kind of help build out the compound. So like, you know, for instance, they don't start with chairs. They don't have any chairs, so they have to do something to get the chairs, and they have to vote people out and whatnot. But it's so dark. It is so dark. Like, this is one of the darkest stories I've read recently. Okay, I've read a lot of dark stories, like Bright Young Women, sure. But this was dark in a different way. It was dark in the way that humanity is, like, so terrifying. It really, truly is. And like, this book, if you just want a look into humanity and the way that we do things, and oh my God, it's incredible. And I recommend just giving it a shot like I did, because I didn't think, I'm like, whatever, I don't really care about reality TV and whatnot, but fantastic. It was devastating. It was so dark. The whole time I just felt disgusted with what they were doing and the way that things played out, and, you know, what the producers were doing and were involved with. I mean, we never really figure out exactly, but I mean, we can assume. But oh my God, it was amazing. 5 stars for me. So, so good. I recommend it. If you've been like shying away from this kind of book, give it a try. And then lastly, we have another 5 stars, which is like, what the heck is going on? But this was Half His Age by Jeanette McCurdy. And I absolutely loved this. So I started by reading it on my Kindle. And then I saw an interview where she, you know, kind of talked about the work she had, you know, put in for the audiobook. And I was like, okay, I'll listen to the audiobook. So I did about like a quarter reading and then the rest on audio. And honestly, the audiobook was fantastic. So in this story, I mean, it's kind of obvious by the title, but we have this girl that's, you know, not in the best situation with her mom and not in the best situation in life in general. And, you know, is really struggling, and basically she gets with her teacher, and that's pretty much it. And it's disgusting and disturbing, and yeah, this is not for the faint of heart. I think that you definitely need to look up trigger warnings if you're about to read this book. But yeah, the narration was incredible. The writing was incredible. She did a great job at making it feel young, and really makes you realize this character is young. Like, it's not an adult. It's really not an adult. So yes, I just found it fantastic. And the character development, everything in between, the disgusting adult, oh my God, like, it's horrible. So yeah, like, look up trigger warnings, but if this is a book you've been wanting to read and you're okay with the trigger warnings, definitely give it a go. And I would recommend the audiobook if you can get your hands on it, because yeah, it was fantastic. And I'm not sure exactly if everything was by Jeanette McCurdy, but you know what, give her props. Like, she is an author. Like, she really is an author, and we all know her from iCarly and whatnot, but like, she's a true author and is doing amazing work. So yeah, props to her, and I'm so excited to see what she comes out with next. So yeah, amazing. And this was another 5 stars. So out of the 8 books that I read, I got 3 5 stars, which is an amazing ratio. I think, like, for the most part, I know what books I like, and that's why I can get a good 5-star easily. But The Compound was really one that I did not think that I would love, but I absolutely loved it. So that is it for the books that I read. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that this was interesting, and I hope that you give some of these books a try, especially The Compound. I think that's definitely worth a try. So yeah, anyways, have a really good day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.